I thought it might be fun to find out what it feels like to be dyslexic. Okay, class, eyes up here. I want your attention. Take out your readers, your readers. And we're going to, this is a very interesting story. I know you'll all love it. And so we're going to take turns reading. All right, so we're going to start right up here. And would you read us the first page?
Wizards and elves have books.
Do you have an answer page? You figured it out? Okay, oh yes, that's right. First page. First page gives you a book. All right, wizards and elves have books. All right, page 2. Okay, would you read the next page, please?
Are you in all these?
Okay. All right, and turn the page. Would you read the next page, please? No telling. You have to read it herself. Can anybody help her? All these books. Okay, very good. Let's go to the back of the room. Let's see. Paula, could you read the next page, please? Page 4. Okay. Do you know this one already, Paula? No? Okay.
I mean, I've done this activity, but I don't.
Okay.
Are you in the hall waiting for lunch?
Is that right, class? No. Who can tell us what it really says? Do you like all these books? All right. Denise, would you read the next line, please?
There's a whole bunch of us in this book, and we really like to be elves.
Can anybody help Denise with that line?
I thought I was on the circle page. I'm just looking at the picture trying to make up a picture.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
because that's really
you're looking at pictures trying to figure out what these are. Having to flip back and forth. Do you like being in them all? Right, page 5. Do I have a volunteer for page 5? Miss Ewing.
I was on the next page. I just read the picture.
Yes, I do. And the next line?
All like books and
We all like being in them. Yes, we all like being in them. Page 6. Let's see. May I pick on somebody else? How about next to Sue in the red coat? Now page 6. How are you? Let's see what happens on this page, class. Now, I know if you just try a little harder, you'll be able to get this. Just concentrate. Look at the words. Look at them one, look at each one. See if you can look at the vowel and tell what's going on.
No, if you're dyslexic, you look at the picture and you figure out what's going on.
Exactly right.
Because the words don't make any sense.
That's right. I am not like other elves. Yes, okay. And? Kristen?
I can't read this.
You can't read it? Cindy, can you?
I don't like being in
These books. I don't like being in these books. Page 7. All right. Teddy, tell us what's happening on page 7. Look, there's the wizard.
You.
Yeah, you.
Sound it out.
Don't see in these books. Why not? Okay, here comes the next page.
No matter, not in the back or anything.
Yeah, right there we go. Can I go to the
I
next
wrote
one?
a pencil. All these
And then there's the kid in the back with his head down, he's looking under the desk like that. Right. So just to go on with this, I am the giant in all of these books, but I don't like being a giant. Why don't you like giants? That's your kid festival. I like giants, but I don't like stilts. Okay. What is that? Is that right? Okay. Now, so that's a little taste of what it's like to have to struggle through a text. Because kids, are dyslexic children, to them, these words are just pictures on a page. They don't relate to speech sounds. And they don't see the vowels. If you say, look at the vowel, or what's the start of that word? I don't know. And they, as Denise said, they're looking at the pictures, trying to get context clues. They're trying to think, well, what do I know about elves? And all the rest of it. So for them, reading is a huge challenge like this. And that now you can see why some kids, when they're reading along, on one page they'll get a word, and the very next line they won't get the word. And so it's sort of the nature of the disability. Okay. Any questions? Please do not keep these. I need these back.
I wrote
Oh, it's all right. Just pass it into me. Yeah, because I use these. I should have said first not to write on them. But please pass it. I got it from a simulation workshop, but it's.
I guess I got nominated for this.
Maybe we can post it online.
Somehow
Or
I got nominated for this.
maybe we can post it online, or but it cost me $50 to register. So I would like to keep them. I'll keep the paper copies and we'll scan them. We can? Okay. All right. We'll try. We will try to get those.
There are some online. There's one on the Misunderstood Minds website that they could go to and use.
And if we, I will try to get, proper sort of citations and stuff so we can put it on the. If you want it, if you want to buy it, it's okay. All right. Now, so we found out about what dyslexia is, and in general, the history of dyslexia. I am not very good at standing still. So let's have a look at a quick look at reading disability. Not every child having problems with reading or failing in reading is dyslexic. Not all reading disabilities are dyslexia. So how do you tell? As a child, as a parent, or as a teacher in the classroom, it may help you to sort of be able to look maybe at some testing scores or some characteristics of kids and figure out, what's going on with them. Because the intervention is different for different reading problems. Some things are, you know, like the Orton-Gillingham principles that we've talked about are really pretty good for almost all children, except for that 1% or 2% who really can't, or are so severe, maybe they will never be able to get the sound system. However, there are other things to do for kids who have a different variety of reading problems. Let's see. All right, so there's the definition. We can skip that. Here are some characteristics. I'm probably going to skip through most of those as well. They're on your handout. Most of you know these. What I do want you to notice is that I've listed characteristics for different age groups. And that is because not only is dyslexia on a continuum of severe to not so severe, it is also on it also changes its nature as the kid gets older. So in the younger child, you will see that you need to work, you know, you'll see these problems with rhyming and with identifying, isolating, and manipulating sounds, the sound-to-letter associations. Later on, these difficulties will translate into fluency, choppy reading, and you won't see the scores show up so much in the phonological awareness difficulties. It will sort of mutate into more slow, choppy, labored, inaccurate reading. Then as they get older, it may morph into even more into written expression difficulties. And so the nature of dyslexia also changes during the lifetime. There's sort of how it expresses itself. The underlying causes are still there, but how it looks might change, and what the kid needs might change. Okay. On this handout, I don't know how these turned out. Can you even see them on your handout? So, okay, that's not too bad. All right, so we're going to look at some profiles of dyslexic kids. Actually with kids with different reading disabilities or problems. All right, this is John, and this is a profile of a dyslexic, testing profile of a dyslexic child. The tests that he was given were an IQ test, and it could be any of those listed underneath the IQ line, a math assessment, listening comprehension, reading comprehension, real word reading, that's like sight word reading, spelling, nonsense words reading, non-word reading, and phonological skills. And underneath you'll see that there are, rapid naming. You will see there are different tests listed that can be used to test those areas. A little word about what these tests are, I think you will understand. The first ones, and through the reading comprehension, reading real words, on one of the measures that we use is called the test of word reading efficiency, and in that, the kid has two tasks. The first one is just to read a list of real words as fast as he can. 45 seconds. How many real words can you read? And that gives us an idea of how efficiently you can read real words. That requires fast retrieval of information as well as a recognition. The spelling, obviously, that just a measure of your spelling ability. Nonsense words, that's where we really get down to you have to demonstrate your ability to your phonics ability, your phonetic ability. And that's another one that's on the test of word reading efficiency. You're just given a list of words. How many nonsense words can you read in 45 seconds? And so we get an idea of how good your true decoding sound symbol relationship thing is, phonetic skills. And then the CTOP tests your phonological awareness. You know, like how well do you isolate, manipulate, and manage the sound system of our language as it relates to reading and writing. It tests your phonological memory, which is a fascinating thing. It tests phonological memory is your ability to hold in like a working memory the beginning of a sequence long enough so you get till, when you get to the end of the sequence, you can put it all together to make a word. And so I've had kids, I have one right now, whose difficulties are such that she can't hold the beginning of a word long enough to the end of the word for her to blend it together and make sense of it. You'll see these kids do like this. And this is the example I always give, so forgive me, those of you who know this. So say they've got the word trip. You say, what are this, you know, they're supposed to read the word trip. So they go, r, r, e, r, e, trig. You know, but they just can't hang on to it to put it together. And this phonological memory bit can be very, very debilitating. And, you know, I have a student, an adult actually, who at the beginning when we started working together, if he had a CVC word, like pig, he could not do it. He was ending up saying things like pit or bag or anything because he couldn't hang on to the sequence. All right, and then the rapid automatic naming is another important skill that's tested under the CTOP. It is how quickly can you retrieve from long-term memory information that should be very familiar, like letter names. You can see that if you were to, if you couldn't do that, and you're reading a word, and it takes you much longer than your peers to retrieve the fact that the letter T that you see on the page says T, it's going to take you a lot longer to put those words together and read them. And so that can be a real stumbling block. It slows down the whole process. On top of deficits in phonological memory, it can make life very, very difficult and affects comprehension. Okay, there's John. Let's look at his scores. He has an IQ of 115, and you can see from the descriptions at the top of the page that that's a high average IQ. His math is quite a lot lower actually, but it's still in the average range. Listening comprehension is pretty strong, kind of commensurate with his IQ. That means that what he hears, he can understand. His reading comprehension is also pretty strong. Look at his IQ though. The IQ, he's got a lot of background knowledge, he's got he's got good strong thinking skills, he can figure things out. Reading real words, now things start to drop off. That's 80, a standard score of 80. These are all standard scores, so I hope you know something about standard scores. Which means that it's kind of it's really getting kind of weak. It's sort of in the low average range. Spelling, 74, we're dropping. Reading nonsense words, he really does not have a good sense of the sound system at all. And the phonological skills and rapid automatic naming are way down there. You see the difference between the IQ and those scores at the bottom. Well, what's happening here is that this is a really classic dyslexic kid. He has these great strengths up here, and his weaknesses are all to do with language, with processing the sound system of language. So he's got a lot of good things going for him, but that's where his difficulties lie. This is another dyslexic kid profile. His IQ is not quite so high. His math is low. We could talk about math, but we won't. Those could be interactive. Listening comprehension is in the average range. Again, when you get down to those phonological decoding language skills, they're all fall off quite a bit. And so that's would also be something a pretty average set of test scores that we might see. So strong thinking skills, good array of skills in many areas, and his weaknesses are all in these language areas. So I'd love to see that math, but I mean there is probably something going on there. Anyway, okay. The next one, we're going to go on to, that's a dyslexic kid and what they look like. Another source of reading disability is what we would call a broad language disability. This child is different. They will have an average IQ, although the verbal IQ may be below average. You've got the full scale IQ, which combines verbal and nonverbal processing speed and working memory. This child, verbal IQ may actually be lower than the rest of it. Language, it may have language disabilities with or without speech articulation problems. The reading problems are secondary to language delays, and language comprehension is low, like the listening and the reading comprehension scores will be low. What do we mean by language disabilities? That means that not only do they have problems with the print aspects of language, like reading or figuring out the sound system relationships, but they don't get the structure of language across the board. And we have a couple of people in the room, including Paula and Denise, who can talk a lot about this, that they may have deficits in vocabulary, understanding the syntax, sentence structure, like verb, subject, pronouns are a biggie, and when you have complex sentences, they might not be able to follow a sentence that has many parts to it because they can't relate them. They may also have problems in what we call pragmatic language, just the social language of life, and so they'll be misunderstanding a lot what's going on around them in the classroom, on the playground, at home, because they're not, their concept or their grasp of social language is also not strong. Denise, you guys back there, you want to add anything to that?
One of the things you'll also sometimes see is pragmatics, that they're just functional use of language to interact.
Right.
Isn't what you would expect it to be in a child without a language.
Right. Okay, so that's sort of what the language, the disabled kid looks like. Here's some testing scores. Here's Mary, and Mary's IQ is broken down on this one. The others were a full scale. This one you'll see a V at the top and their low average. V, that's the verbal IQ. Their vocabulary, their language comprehension, as measured on an IQ scale, is 83 in the low average range. The P is the perceptual reasoning part, which is the nonverbal part. And so the nonverbal part for Mary is pretty good. So she's going to have a full scale IQ that looks kind of normal, average, You'll think, oh, she's fine. But when you look more closely, that verbal IQ is low. Well, that's a big problem when you're trying to learn reading and language and how to write and all that stuff. Math is actually higher than our verbal and is, but sort of in the ballpark. Listening comprehension is sort of along with language, her verbal comprehension. And as you see, all the other scores also are kind of not so far off her verbal IQ. Until you get down here to rapid naming, and her rapid naming is really quite good. So you see, what you don't see in this score, in this profile, is that big drop-off into the processing of language. She has a sort of across-the-board kind of scores that don't show those big fluctuations like they do with a sort of classic dyslexic kid. The intervention for the dyslexic child, we've heard about the interventions today, systematic, really emphasizing the learning the sound system in a very structured and sequential way. Would that work for this child? Absolutely. It wouldn't hurt her at all, but she's going to need something else. On top of the dyslexia Orton-Gillingham program, she's going to need some specific guidance in whatever it is that's causing this language delay, vocabulary, syntax, structure, pragmatic language, like Denise said. And so she's going to need, the intervention of a language therapist or a really well-trained OG person. Okay, now we have a low ability reader. These kids have IQs that are below average. Their decoding and word recognition are below average, but about level with the IQ. Their listening comprehension and reading comprehension are also low. In fact, all skills tend to be low. And this is what this testing profile looks like. If you can just look down there, you'll see that there are no big fluctuations there either. I guess with Mary, the language IQ person, her nonverbal was pretty strong, so that was her strength. But with this one, her IQ is 79 in the very low range. Math is a bit better in the low average. The listening comprehension and all the rest sort of fall in the same ballpark. Her skills are delayed across the board, and we can't just treat her like a dyslexic child. This child doesn't have the cognitive abilities that are needed to progress very quickly. Still, would the OG approach work with this person? Yeah, but it would just go more slowly. And you may need other things as well. This child, one of his strengths, her strengths, would be memorization. Her rote memory may be better than her ability to recognize and learn patterns. And so you may use some sight word kind of methods with this child. But she would need some pretty direct, pretty intensive work across the board. So, yeah, for a dyslexic child, rote memory is not a strength. It's not how they learn. But for this child, that may be exactly the way she learns best.
How are these students handled in college? Because the lack of individual attention in college is lacking.
All right, it's probably not likely that this low ability child would make it to college. But the other kids, with proper intervention and effective and sustained intervention and treatment, they can go to college. They may need accommodations. Perhaps they'll need more time on exams. Maybe they need some other accommodations, like being able to access their readings through recorded books, or having a scribe or something like that. But they certainly got the brain power to do college work. Okay. Any comments about this, what I've mentioned so far? Okay. If I can get the next one up. Oh, okay. I think we've talked about all of these. Oh, yeah, other causes of reading problems. I didn't go into ADHD, but it's a big one. Attention deficit disorder mimics dyslexia in some aspects, and it has its own effects on reading. Like I was talking to you about the child with working memory problems who just can't keep it together long enough to make words. Well, the ADD kid can be like that too. In fact, they may also have poor working memory. And so they're very impulsive. Their errors will look a little different. Well, they may look the same, but for a different reason. So when it comes to reading, they can be quite impulsive, and they'll just guess anything just to get through it, say something, move on to the next one. Their inability to sustain focus on the task, restlessness and lack of interest, poor working memory and processing speed all have their effects on reading. And they may actually have pretty good phonological skills and phonological awareness, and the rest of it may be able to get the phonetic code without much difficulty, but they can't, it's all the rest of it that affects them. There could be environmental factors causing reading problems. Poor nutrition, parental attitudes, lack of opportunity, poor school attendance, and in rare cases, not so much anymore, but in rare cases maybe poor teaching, but you don't see that too much. And then stress and emotional problems. We know right off the bat, if there are emotional problems, high levels of stress, learning does not happen. And so that's got to be addressed first. If they're, and it's going to be the tutor or the teacher's first job is to address whatever stress or emotional issues there are before you can just forget about learning until that's taken care of. And then, of course, an English language learner, somebody's first language is not English, that will cause reading problems in a different way. Okay. Okay, let's see if I can get the next one up. Comments about what I was talking about? Yes. Oh, yes. These will be they'll be posted online. Is that right?
What's that?
The handouts.
Yes.
The slideshow. Right. If you go, Mary, sorry. All right. We'll post these handouts online so that you can read them. And I'm sorry about the fact that it's tiny, but you can go to our website, which is idaalabama.org. And they'll be there. I don't think case matters, does it? It's lowercase, but I don't.
It's all lowercase.
Lowercase. idaalabama.org. Also, this little interpreting test screening scores thing is there too, so that can be useful. Oh, sorry.
The profile of dyslexics in a language disability? Are they
Combined? No, they can be together. I mean, very often the kid with, they do overlap. So what you'll see there is that, well, at that point, a kid with dyslexic characteristics and all these language problems, we would just call them language delay. They would be a child with language broad language disability. Any other questions? Okay, great, thank you. So what can you do if you're a parent or you're in the classroom? And I'm going to go very quickly to this because I know that Hetty's got lots of ideas this afternoon. This is just a few things. And also I catched a few slides from Trudy. And so we'll just skip those because she's already done those. Okay, first of all, works don't. That is work. Workbooks can be useful for homework and things like that, but they're not a teaching tool for our children. Kids need direct instruction, and except for perhaps as a matter of practice, workbooks are usually ineffective. We need. No. It's that the information in it is not delivered in the way that kids need. They need it delivered directly by you to the kid with multisensory techniques. So that's what Trudy was talking about, using your hand, your eye, your mouth, your body together so that all of those synapses in your brain, all those pathways in your brain are firing together. That's why in a multisensory Orton Gillingham classroom, all of the routines involve all of the sensory pathways at once, not one at a time. It's not like first we do something tactile, and then we do something visual, and then we do something auditory. They're all together at once. That's what multisensory means. It's not hopping around the room doing games. So, and that's what a workbook cannot accomplish. So, you're welcome. Direct instruction is important. And these are some things to remember. When you're teaching a skill, you're going to have to repeat it daily until mastered. And for some kids, I think I heard like 180 repetitions minimum for kids to get, for our dyslexic children, to be able to internalize a skill. So there's a lot of work, a lot of time involved. Introduce the next step of any skill or any acquisition in a logical way, like from easy to hard, from known to unknown, and all those good things. So you need a logical way to introduce things. Always link reading and spelling together. One reinforces the other. They're not separate things. And so there's not really such a thing as teaching, I'm just going to teach reading, because the two skills are intimately linked. And you want to teach sounds and new concepts slowly and systematically. Thank you, Trudy. So here are some tips for reading with your child. So how should I read with my kid? So he's sent home and I've got to read with him. How do I do this? And here's some questions. How often should we read with our children? Every single day. Sundays included. Should I correct every word she misreads? So they're reading along and they're stumbling. I'd say, well, there's a really, really worn, famous, useful phrase in the multisensory language, Orton Gillingham circles, and that's "it depends." It depends on if you're going to interrupt the flow of the meaning for the child. If it's a good place to stop, if the word that he misreads is going to affect his understanding of the next thing to come, then I would just say, oh, let's look at this word again. What did you say that was? I didn't quite hear it. Let's go back and look at it again. And then they can go on and they'll get the meaning, because that's really why we're reading, right? It's for meaning. So if it's just a little word like a the or an a or an it kind of depends on your purpose. But I would say leave it till the end of the sentence or the end of the paragraph, and then go back and read for smoothness. Then they can get some rhythm up. Should I tell him the words that he's stumbling over? Again, that depends. If they're working on it, And, you know, they're getting there, just wait. But if they're doing this for like 15 seconds and nothing's happening, then I would supply the word. And maybe talk about the word a little bit. What's hard about that word?
What if they say a word that means almost the same, only it's not there?
Yeah, that, again, that goes to, like, are you going to interrupt the flow of his comprehension if it means the same thing? But this is very common. And I would then, at the end of the sentence, go back and reread. Let's say, did that really say house or did it say home? Should I make her reread choppy sentences? Yes, I would. Again, not to death, but go back and reread for smoothness and fluency. It helps them get the sense of reading in rhythm and smoothness. And I would, and many of you know, there are several ways of accomplishing this. You can read together, right? So if this sentence was really choppy, I'll read it with you. And then you read just a tiny bit faster than the child is reading, and you sort of drag them along with you, and they can get the feel of the flow. You can have them, and I love this one, it works really well with lots of kids, say, let's do that sentence again, but this time, read it to yourself first. And when you really feel good about it, read it aloud to me. And then you can do it. Or you can take turns. I'll read it first, then you read it. So there are various ways of doing that. How do I help him get to the right word without telling him? Well, that's called questioning to the error. And you figure out what it is he's missing. And you say, well, let's say, see if I can think of an example. Say he reads stick for stack. Then you say, can you tell me the sounds that are in that word? And then get them to tap out, ick, or point to a little marker or pebble or pennies or something to isolate the sounds. Ick. Is that what you said? Then they'll say, oh no, it's stick, it's not stack. Or you can ask them to say, I heard you say stack. Is that the word that's on the page? Let's go back and look at it again. The idea, though, is to lead them to getting the right answer, so that they can. Or if you can say, well, what were you thinking about when you were reading that word? Can you tell me why you thought it was that? Get them to tell you so that they're thinking. Is it okay for her to read books below her grade or 8R level? Yes, it is. Because reading is, for a struggling reader, keeping them at the frustration or independent level is just so exhausting and frustrating. And so for those children who are struggling readers, you want to help them get the feel of being comfortable as a reader, of having some success and having the I did it feeling. And so, yes, absolutely fine. There's another aspect to this. Oh, well, hang on, that's the next one. What if he asked me to read a page? Does she need to read every assignment that she's given by herself or himself, whatever, whoever it is, whichever? Yes, like I said before, you can take turns, and as a parent or a teacher, you'll know when this is an avoidance tactic. You'll say, I think you can do that, or how about if you read a line and I'll read a line. And, but you know, when you sense that you're hitting the avoidance tactic thing, hopefully you'll be able to tell. But then maybe he's avoiding for a reason. Maybe he or she is saying, you know, I'm really tired. I've read 3 pages and that's a whole lot of work. So be sensitive as a parent or a child about that. The real question is, like in when you get to middle school or upper elementary or high school even, does she need to read every assignment? Does she? I see what I got my pronouns fixed up. Again, again, that depends on the purpose. Is the purpose of this reading, or is the purpose of this reading information? If the purpose of the reading, like in history or science, is information, then maybe that child does not need to read every word by himself. Maybe it's perfectly fair to have that on tape, or to you do paired reading with the parent or something like that. That the thing will be, you know, especially if it's reading for information, when reading is so difficult for these children that maybe the decoding even at high school is a problem, then how much is he taking in of the information while he's struggling over the decoding? Not a whole lot. He will probably learn a whole lot more of that information by listening to it, especially if we know that our dyslexic kids usually have pretty good listening comprehension. Okay, we did this, we don't need to do that, but it is important as a parent or a teacher to know about the sound system and that. We can do this though. Let's take the word stack, because it's a nice and regular word. Let's practice tapping, and you can teach your child to tap too, at home or in the classroom. Stack, or stack. Pull it down. The blending part at the end is very important, either by running your finger under it and saying the word stack all as one unit, or by putting those little fingers together and pulling it down and saying the word. So that you would be amazed at how much spelling improves just by tapping the sounds in a word. Mm-hmm.
So much, and people hear me already. I know this was asked it before. We have a brand new first-year student at Green this year, and I thought that I knew a lot about different kinesthetic methods or multisensory methods, and I was really impressed the first time I met with Mrs. Wergerson, and she dumped out her buttons and showed me all of those things. Is it ever possible for somebody who might be interested in seeing it done to audit a tutoring session?
Yes, in fact, I mean, that could be a session by itself. I do this for parents at Green Gate and in the summer camp as well. What's a lesson like, and what are some of these techniques? And so, sure, just call Trudy. I say sure. I'm not the one supposed to say sure anymore.
I realize you have to not disrupt the students on a daily basis, but I just think, you know, of all the teachers that we interact with our other children in different schools, that it would be just fascinating once a quarter for, you know, a variety of people to come sit with different tutors and watch.
If you're really interested, then also there's the training in the spring in June, first 2 weeks of June, or going in training at Green Gate. Yeah?
I am planning, and I wanted to talk to you about that, doing a session for parents and actually going through a lesson. And, you know, anyone could come, but we can do that, especially for parents at Green Gate. But have an evening session or a Saturday morning session and actually show the lesson.
Right.
Until you see it, you don't really understand what we mean by linking all of the modalities, as Marcia said.
Yeah. So, okay, you're on the IDA, you know, our contact list. Maybe we can do something in that way.